ba.
Very stately.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Conservative Corner. We are very glad that you're with us here tonight. We are extremely glad because we are very happy. We are overjoyed. We are living in total nirvana, politically and otherwise. Why? For obvious reasons. Because we, Republicans, the Republican Party of the United States, has won the triple crown of politics. And that, of course, is we won the House of Representatives, the Senate, and above all, the presidency. And we have a very friendly and supportive Supreme Court to make sure that everything's done right over the next 4 years. As Jackie Gleason once said, how sweet it is. It doesn't get any better than this. So that being said, we're very overjoyed, and it shows, and I'm smiling, our guests are smiling, and everyone in our Republican orb is smiling. However, not everyone in the state is. Why? Because we're a very liberal state, and it's run by the Democrats. We, unfortunately, in the Republican Party, have no statewide elected officials like we did before. That's the way it is right now, and that's unfortunate. In the last election of just a few weeks ago, of course, we had a very good statewide candidate named John Deaton, who ran for the Senate against Elizabeth Warren. He beat her in both debates. He was a much better candidate and would have been a much better senator, but he lost. That's unfortunate. We also had some very good state reps who ran and deserved to win, especially Vlad Yanofsky of Newton and Ginny Gardner from our new TV studios, who also ran a very gallant campaign and unfortunately lost to the incumbent, Democrat incumbent, of course, in her town of Wayland. But that's how it goes in our state, at least for now.
Right.
But nevertheless, what has happened on the national scene is really a political earthquake, a political juggernaut, so to speak, in a very good sense. Again, you have the Republican Party for the first time ever, and I checked it out. You have to go back 100 or 120 years even, maybe even into the 19th century, to find such a monopoly that the Republican Party now has on politics, on the federal government. So wonderful things are going to happen. And to all of our liberal Democratic friends who think that the world is crashing down on them, have no fear. The things that are going to happen to you, to us, to the country, will happen to you as well. Gas prices are going to go down. Inflation will go down. The price of milk, the price of eggs will go down. Wonderful things are going to happen. Deregulation will be everywhere. And yes, we're going to have clean water, clean air. And by the way, we're not going to have any wars because our president, our incoming president, is dead set against doing that. We're not going to get bogged down in wars in the Middle East, in Eastern Europe. It's not going to happen, unlike the fear of if the other party got into power. So your sons and daughters turning 18 or young adults can be rest assured it's not going to happen. We are entering a golden era of peace and prosperity. And I stress that, the double peace. And it's so important that you believe that. And if you don't right now, eventually you will. And no, Donald Trump is not evil incarnate. He's not a racist, never was, never will be. He's a very good man, and he'll be a very good president, and his interests lie in the United States of America. He has 4 years to accomplish a great deal, and he will accomplish a great deal. And we as Americans will benefit as a group, as a country, totally, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Have faith. Give the man a chance if you didn't vote for him. Trust me, you'll be glad that you did. And trust me, at the end of 4 years, you'll be much better off than you were at this time. And to talk about this, to elaborate on this, I'm very glad to have with us tonight a very important guest whom we've had before. You may recall that Colonel Julie Hall, a retired Air Force colonel, ran a few years ago against Joe Biden Can Do No Wrong Auchincloss, our congressman, who's been from Newton, who's been with us now for a few years. And if things don't change, will be with us for another few years. So obviously we're going to try to change that as soon as we can. But nevertheless, Julie Hall is a very impressive individual in the fact that she retired as a full colonel from the Air Force, but she is currently wears 3 Republican crowns, and that is she was a full delegate to the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee this past summer. She is a Republican State Committee woman from Attleboro, and she was the co-chair, along with Richie McGarry of Newton, of the Massachusetts Veterans for Trump, which actually de facto was the New England Veterans for Trump, in which they reached out to veterans groups and Trump groups throughout the country to solidify the veteran support for Donald Trump, which, by the way, wasn't really hard to do, because veterans support Trump as well they should, as do military personnel. So, Colonel Hall, it is wonderful to have you here
Thank
again,
you.
Julie.
It's an honor to be here.
It really is.
Yes.
And, you know, we've been through this, through various elections, good and bad. Your own, especially, a few years ago, where you ran a gallant campaign to, to run, and you lost, unfortunately. And it's the ebb and flow of politics. But now we've come out of this election cycle with a result that I don't think any of us really dared to comprehend,
Right.
whereby we won the trifecta.
Right.
And honestly, we would have been happy with winning the presidency and let the others do what they may. But still, we won all 3. And it's a wonderful time for our party. Quite frankly, it's a wonderful time for an American. Now, you and I were together at the convention in Milwaukee, and we had a great time there.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And as I recall, you wore a colonial, blue and white colonial
Yes, I did.
Revolutionary War
Right.
uniform, and you were. I think that you were the most photographed delegate on the convention
That's
floor,
what I was
you looked
told.
really
Yes,
amazing.
yeah.
That you really did.
Thank you.
And you were there on the floor the whole time, and it was really a wonderful time to be there, and it was wonderful. It was really a great party and a great small P party, and everyone was so nice and kind and generous and great. Now, did you envision at that convention that we would win? Now, be honest, that we
Yeah.
would win the trifecta, or did you think that we would just win the presidency? Because I'll tell you, I thought we'd win the presidency. I was cautiously optimistic, but I never even dared hope that we would win the trifecta, the Republican trifecta.
Yeah, I was really surprised in a very, very positive way. And, you know, I think even more than just winning the presidency, the fact that he won everything and the popular vote. He won, so it's even more than a trifecta, Tom. He won the popular vote, too. And that was a direct message, and it needed to be a very strong message to this country that things that were going on, people were just going too far. And I think even the Democrats have been saying that lately, is, you know, we just push things too far. And, you know, I was just hoping that in some way the country would push back and say, hey, listen, we don't want socialism. We like being American citizens. We like America the way it was. And I think that message really needed to be made, or we could be in a whole different direction now.
You know, Colonel, also, I think that the Democrats this time, they were in a no-win situation in that they had really 2 terrible candidates
Right.
running. First, Joe Biden. He would not have won. And second, they had Kamala Harris, who was really a bad candidate. I mean, she was so bad that when she ran in 2020, she didn't even make it to the Iowa caucus. She had to drop out before that. She didn't get a single delegate vote,
Right.
which was very unusual that Biden would pick her as vice president. But I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that she was female and that she was half black.
yeah.
It was really a tokenism, and I think that the Obama people pressured him to do that. And then, of course, when she finally got the nod, after the Democrats basically staged a coup led by Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Obama to get rid of Biden, they set him up unbelievably so, and they got rid of him, and he stepped down, and then Kamala stepped in, and she was an amazingly inept candidate, and the people who were running her campaign were amazingly inept in that we won. We basically won every contested state, all the contested states, and we won. And according to the demographics, we won the Hispanic vote. We had a huge turnout with the black vote, female vote. I mean, you go down the line, we won or had impressive gains in just about every
So, you know,
category.
I wasn't surprised about how that went. And there were a couple of things that were indicators for me. You know, the first thing I wanted to say is, you know, just their rhetoric that they use, their campaign slogans, you know, I have to say, I feel very unburdened by what could have been.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, and I'm very joyful that they didn't win. I mean, to have those kinds of things, well, we're going to be joyful, and J.D. Vance was weird, and I was like, what is this stuff that's going on? And nobody, it was just horrible, horrible. People asked me about the identity politics that they played. Well, if you're going to play identity politics, you better have somebody like Margaret Thatcher or Condoleezza Rice running, okay? She did not carry herself, as I would think, in the way of a leader, period. I've been in the military. I've had to be challenged with those same obstacles of my gender. And I knew that there were women that were not going to vote for her, the same reason the women didn't vote for Hillary. It's the same kind of thing. But I also knew, and they were trying to set up that the men were going to vote for her and all these women. It was a very small group of very loud people that were saying that they were going to vote for her. And they, the fact that they tried to shame everybody. I'm going to give you, for instance, Julie Roberts did a voiceover, basically telling women that if they wanted to vote for Donald Trump, it was okay. You could sneak. We don't want to sneak. That's a bad message. You shouldn't be telling women that they have to be sneaky. We've got our voice. You see?
Yes.
And so everything they did was counterproductive.
the guilt trip certainly didn't work. I think the Democrats have a very condescending view of the American people, and they assume that women would have voted for her, Kamala, because she's a woman, and of course they're going to vote for her. And of course, all the blacks are going to vote for her because she's black. Well, it didn't happen,
right?
And the American people are much more in tuned to politics, to what's going on, than the Democrats care to admit. They have common sense. They have dignity. They're smart. Whether they're farmers in Iowa, whether they work in the Mississippi Delta as shrimp fishermen, whether they work construction jobs. They're very much in tune with what's going on. They have common sense, and they decided, based on what they were seeing, with what was happening to their country, on the border, with Mexico, with the influx of millions of illegals into this country, and the foreign policy that we're almost getting into wars in the Middle East, and also with Eastern Europe, with Russia and Ukraine. They decided, and in addition to what they saw in their pocketbooks, with inflation rising, gas prices rising, that enough is enough. That they would put their trust in Trump, whom at least they knew from before. And they could remember that, gee, it didn't cost $30 to $40 to bring a whole family to McDonald's in 2018 when Trump was president. It didn't cost $50 to fill up a tank of gas as when Trump was president. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can get back to that.
But one of the issues that I was a little concerned about was the abortion issue. And and I kind of blame Republicans for that. We're kind of the ones that brought that up into the front and center. But that actually turned against them also because it was a singular issue, and there were so many other things that women
certainly
were concerned about.
Right.
We were concerned about what happened with Riley Gaines and transgenders in sports.
Men in women's sports.
There are so many things, and I had people saying, a women's body themselves, and I said, you're probably the same person who told me that I had to take a shot. So
yes.
That was my body. Is it my choice?
Yes.
Same people. So they forget, unfortunately, that they took a stance this time, but now they're going to say, okay, but it was very selective. They're very selective about, what they believe is the right and wrong things, and they forget that, and with women in particular, that's one of the things I told somebody one time is I fought very much for my rights as a woman, that I wasn't supporting women if I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. I'm like, that's totally ridiculous. I fight for women all the time, and, to use that against people. If she was a great candidate, I might have thought about it, but she was a horrible candidate.
But also, Julie, the Democrats live in a bubble of their own making, a very liberal bubble, and they only seem to speak to and congregate with each other, and especially with their media friends, of which there are many.
Right.
And they don't really understand, and I think they're totally clueless as to how the average American thinks and what is important to the average American. Well, what is important to the average American is not some obscure, distant war in Ukraine, or things of or transgender rights, or kids getting gender changing operations in schools, and boys getting into women's locker rooms and bathrooms. It's important to them, but it's not important to the rest of us.
Right.
Across the spectrum, black, white, Hispanic, Indian, I mean, Jew, Gentile, you name it. And, you know, what was interesting, too, is that Donald Trump appealed to many different groups, but what surprised me most was that even the Muslims, and I'm saying even the Muslims, but the Muslims of the Muslim community of Michigan, a very important contested state, voted with Trump. Right. Now, why would they vote with Trump? For the reasons that I just stated. Yeah. They don't want boys in girls' locker rooms. They don't want their kids to come home and saying that their boys saying that they feel like a girl and I want to get a sex change operation. And they go to the gas pump and I'd have to deal with the same prices that we do in the supermarket and so on and so forth. So I think that it was a combination of two things, really three things actually. The economic issues, which I just stated, the social issues, which I stated, and also the general picture and the most specific pressing issue outside of their own personal lives and their own personal neighborhoods was the situation on the border. Yeah. Essentially, the border has been so porous and so insanely open. It's the Biden administration basically said to the world, come on in.
Right.
And that's what's been happening. We have millions of people that are here now.
Right, and that's an issue. And I had this conversation with one of the reporters from, I think, Mass Inc. They were asking me what I thought about the election. I'm like, how could you worry about all these other issues when your country isn't safe? So we have invited dangerous people inside to our country. We have China chomping at the bit. We've got Iran chomping at the bit. You know, we've got North Korea all waiting to swoop in on us. And, you know, Russia's the least of our worries. They're, you know, still fighting Ukraine. They're fighting that proxy battle over there. But when you have these three people, you know, that are trying to be waiting to come into this country, and you have the enemy within, you're in a really, really bad place. And I think what, you know, I know there's a lot of misconception in my mind about what Trump is going to do. I fully hope that he goes and they find out who these dangerous people are that were let into this country and gets rid of those dangerous people. Because if we don't, we're going to have another September 11th coming up.
My impression is that the most pressing issue that Trump is going to pursue is the border issue and halting the illegal immigration into the country, but also deporting as many of the illegals as he can. And you can tell that by the people that he's put in key positions for his next administration. Stephen Miller, who is a hawk on halting illegal immigration. He's now the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, I think. You have Kristi Noem.
Got Holman back on the border.
Yeah, Kristi Noem, who's the governor of South Dakota. She's now the head. She will be the head of Homeland Security. And then, of course, you have Tom Homan, who's a hawk above all hawks at stopping the immigrants, illegals from coming in. One look at the guy. If you're an illegal immigrant, you want to run the other way. The guy looks like a rhinoceros.
And he's very, very outspoken and pushed back on Congress when they go out. You know, one of the things I see, I'm going to segue a little bit into Massachusetts here. You know, we're taking a stance. You hear people take a stance. We're not going to, you know, cooperate. Well, what's going to happen is the federal dollars are going to be cut off. There are Democrat representatives and Republican representatives in our own state that are already pushing back and having difficulties with their own constituents. It doesn't matter what party they're in. Their towns are in an uproar about the resources. They don't have the resources. They don't have the infrastructure to take care of all of these immigrants that have come in. And that's been a problem. And it doesn't matter what party you're in. Now, if Haley continues to say that and the funds get cut off, it's going to be a problem.
Well, the funds will be cut off eventually because Donald Trump and Tom Homan are not going to put up with it. And Maura Healey has brought in tens of thousands of illegal immigrants. I don't like calling them migrants. They're illegal immigrants. She's brought in tens of thousands to the tune of, I believe the last count was, it cost $1 billion a year to maintain them. And eventually, even under the Biden administration, the or the funds would have been cut off from the federal government, in which case the state had to assume the costs, which they are now, and then the state would eventually turn the costs over to the local communities. And on January 20th, the flow of the illegals into our Commonwealth, into Massachusetts, will stop. The question is, what do we do with the ones who are here?
Right,
And the
exactly.
answer is simply that ICE and the federal marshals will have to get them out. And I don't think, aside from the hardcore liberals at Harvard and Cambridge and elsewhere, that the average person is going to be too upset at them leaving the Commonwealth. Because, quite frankly, they're just not supposed to be here. They shouldn't have been let in the first place. And so we're going to get them out. It will take some time, but they will get out. And the border will be sealed. I have heard that on January 20th that Donald Trump will, I guess, give a verbal order to the Border Patrol, to the directors of the Border Patrol on the Rio Grande Valley, not to let anyone in. It stops, just stop. No one gets let in. And he's very serious about it. And the wall that he started in his administration under great duress, with great difficulty, will be completed. And it will go from San Diego in the Pacific all the way to Brownsville, Texas on the Gulf of Mexico. And you know what? Walls work. You build the right wall, you make it impenetrable, they work.
Well, look at this. What country do you know of that you can just walk into?
That's right.
You can't even walk into Canada. You can't walk into Canada. There's still a border between North and South Korea that's armed. I think a lot of people forget that. There is a border between North and South Korea that is armed. There are still armed Americans and armed North Koreans that, so everywhere I've been, I mean, there's borders, and there's borders to keep people out, and there's a reason why they want to keep people out. So the fact that we just opened ours up goes against all the thinking of security of the countries, of every country that I could possibly think of. And yet the great United States of America.
Julie, there's a precedent for this, and of all countries, Israel. Now, prior to the terrorist onslaught against Israel last year, Israel was and is still a very affluent country. So it has a border with the Sinai Desert, which is sort of like the Mojave Desert in California and Arizona. And what would happen is a lot of the African immigrants, illegals, would come into Israel from Sudan, Ethiopia, places like that. They would cross the border because the border was pretty much open. And Israel wasn't so much concerned with terrorism on that border with Egypt as they are in Lebanon and Jordan, but there was no fence on the border. So the illegal immigrant problem became so acute in Israel that they had to build a fence. And they built it quickly from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, a long straight fence along the border, and the illegal immigration stopped. Now, obviously, they have security problems, but the point that why I'm raising is that fences work, and they will work.
Yes, they do.
And with the United States. Now, another thing that the Biden administration did dramatically and deliberately was to stop the Great Pipeline, which was going from Alberta, Canada, through the Dakotas to the Gulf of Mexico to bring all the Canadian oil down to the Gulf ports and to ship them around the world. On day one of Biden's administration, the day of his inauguration, he signed an executive order stopping that. Why? They never justified or never told the public why they were doing this, but they did it. In which case, gas prices and oil prices went through the roof. Your heating oil, all of our heating oils will be very high this year. Next year they won't be because Trump will get a handle on it. But the country under Trump was not only energy self-sufficient, but was quickly becoming an energy exporter. And that's what Trump wants to do again, make the country an energy exporter. So there's a lot in the administration over 4 years that they will do and need to do in a 4-year period, because Donald Trump's already been president 4 years. Now he's going to be 4 years again. He's in 4 years, and that's it. So he's in a hurry to get all of his appointments in place, and he's picked most of his cabinet and agency secretaries, and he wants to put them in. He doesn't want to wait for congressional or Senate approval. Why? Not because he's afraid that they won't be approved. They will with a Republican Senate, but really because of the fact that that what will happen is he's in a hurry to get things done.
Yeah, and that's quite
and
obvious,
some
yeah.
of the appointments that he's made, I mean, every day I look at some of the appointments that he's made, I'm saying, oh my God, this is brilliant. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Health
I
and
mean,
Human
I have to tell you,
Services
some of them I
Secretary.
just was like, what?
It's just
Who are these
unbelievable.
people? Who are
Marco
these
Rubio
people?
for Secretary of State, Pete Hegseth
Yeah.
for Secretary of Defense. I mean, the list goes on and on. And these
But
are
look at the things, he's picking people out of all different backgrounds, too. They're
Yes.
not all just, these are, Pete Hegseth. I mean, he is just incredible. So
these are
yeah.
really people. These are the people
these are the
who
average everyday person
who were
who's
at
out
our
there.
convention and
Yeah,
spoke so
yeah.
eloquently.
Yeah.
And my favorites are Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy.
right.
I mean, these guys are magnificent.
Yeah.
Self-made billionaires. I think
I should
Elon
say, I said average everyday people, but these are brilliant.
Elon is I think, still the
Brilliant women.
richest person in the world.
Yeah.
But what they want to do on day one is to bring the size of government down by 50 to 80%.
Yeah.
Vivek said something wonderful the other day. I almost jumped out of my seat and started cheering. What he said he wants to do on day one, the Trump administration, January 20th, he's going to put out an order that all federal workers have to come back to work and work from 9 to 5 every day, Monday to Friday. Most of them are at home doing nothing or doing the what do you call it?
Remote work.
Remote work. And so his idea was, well, when you give that order out, about 25% of them will retire or just quit. And then what he wants to do is move departments like the Department of Agriculture to the Midwest, the Department of Energy to Texas. It makes sense. The farmland is in the
Right,
Midwest,
right.
and the energy is in
Right,
Texas.
that is
and then he said, and then
wonderful.
if that happens, when it happens, that he said another 15% will leave because they
They don't
won't
wanna-
want to
yeah, they
relocate.
don't wanna relocate.
So the idea is to get rid of a lot of this dead weight in the federal government and to just reverse the trend that's been going on for 100 years and get these people out of office. Julie, Colonel, this is the fastest 30 minutes in.
I know, we could talk
And
for
we could
this
talk
is a
for,
lot.
and I
There's
wish
a lot
we
of
could,
issues.
but I want to
Lot
bring
of issues.
people's attention to two things. The Mass GOP is alive and well, and we are moving, and this is the front page of the Herald today. Our chairwoman, Amy Connor-Valley, we're very proud of her. She's doing a great job, and we appreciate the efforts that she's making on our behalf. The other thing I want to mention is Ginny Greiman was a great Republican, and she was a wonderful woman who served in the Reagan administration and was also at every convention, a Republican convention and inauguration since, and she passed away a month shy of her 77th birthday. She was a magnificent woman from Wellesley in our district, and we're going to miss her greatly. And I was at the funeral the other day where a lot of good Republicans were there, and she was friends to every Republican governor and Senator Brown, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll miss her. But what I also want to say is Thanksgiving is upon us.
Yes.
Wonderful things are going to happen.
It's a great Thanksgiving.
And
Lots
it's going
to
to
be thankful for.
we're going to be thankful for so many things. And a year from now, even the Democrats will shake their heads in unison and say things aren't that bad. Things are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So that being said, Colonel, we got to have you on again.
I'd love to.
We'd love to do this again. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving to
Same
all
to
of our
you.
viewers as well.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
And a very happy holiday. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year's. It's going to be great. We look forward to it.
Very good.
Bum, 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 bum.